Today I have some simple and beautiful cards that you can create for Easter or for any other occasion. The cards feature some beautiful designer vellum, and today I'm going to share some tips with you on how to use this vellum. Hi, it's Lynn Dunn from Stamptastic Designs. Thanks so much for joining me today. In this episode of Stamptastic TV, you will learn how to use Stampin' Blends to color the beautiful designs in the Graceful Glass Designer Vellum. You will also learn a simple tip for adhering vellum to the cardstock so that you don't see the adhesive. This one little tip will change the way you feel about using vellum. For the latest card making ideas, be sure to subscribe to my channel and click on that little bell so you will be notified each time I upload a new video. Now, have you used vellum in card making before? Give me a thumbs up if you like vellum. If you're not too keen on vellum, leave me a comment below and let me know what your biggest challenges are. So first, let's talk about the supplies that you will need to create these cards. You will need some white, Pool Party, Daffodil Delight, and Mossy Meadow cardstock to create the base of your cards and for the accent pieces. Scrap pieces of yellow or blue cardstock will work just fine for these cards. Of course, you will also need a pack of the Graceful Glass Designer Series Vellum. Now, there are a variety of beautiful patterns in this pack that will allow you to create oodles of cards with the techniques that I'm going to share today. However, for these cards, we are just going to use 2 of the panels from this particular piece of the vellum. Now, I also decided to give you a couple of different options for creating these cards. So I am using some of the Mossy Meadow polka dot pattern paper from the Neutrals DSP pack for one of the cards. And then for the other card, I am using the leaf embossing folder to emboss the Mossy Meadow cardstock. Now, you will also want to choose a stamp set that has your favorite greeting. So for these cards, I am using the Easter greeting from the Fable Friends stamp set. But you could choose any type of greeting for these cards, not just Easter. So for the coloring on these cards, I will be using a variety of different colors of Stampin' Blends. I will be using Pool Party, Mossy Meadow, and Daffodil Delight. Of course, you will also need some regular ink, so I am using Mossy Meadow ink colors to stamp the greeting. And the last thing you will need is some liquid glue and a sponge. All right, that's it. Let's get started. Step number 1, coloring the vellum. So let's start by coloring our vellum pieces for both of the cards. So the front of the vellum has a shiny raised black embossed pattern on it. The back of the panel is flat. So we will be using the back of the panel to do our coloring. So start with the 3 different colors of Stampin' Blends. First, we are going to color the flowers in using the Daffodil Delight Stampin' Blend. Next, we will color the panes of glass using the Pool Party Stampin' Blend. The nice thing about the Stampin' Blends is that you really do not need to be too particular with your coloring. I always start by coloring in the lighter areas first. That way, if I color outside of the lines, I will easily be able to cover it up with a darker color. And finally, we will color the leaves using the Mossy Meadow Stampin' Blend. So you're going to continue to color in the different parts of the vellum until you have achieved the desired look. Now that the vellum panels are colored, simply cut them out by hand with your scissors. I find that it's easier to cut them out by hand because it allows me to cut closer to the black embossed lines for a clean, more finished look. Step number 2, adhering the vellum. Now, adhering the vellum to your cards can be a little challenging. Since you can see through the vellum, it makes it kind of tricky to adhere it to your card so that the adhesive marks don't show through. So, for example, if you use a snail adhesive, you tend to see the adhesive lines through the vellum. If you use glue dots, of course you see the little dots through the vellum. And if you use liquid glue, you see all the squiggly glue marks. However, I just recently discovered that if you use liquid glue and apply it with a sponge, you will not see any adhesive marks behind the vellum. So let me show you how this works. So grab a piece of scrap paper and some multi-purpose liquid glue. Put a little bit of glue on the paper and dab the sponge into the glue. Now lightly dab and sponge the glue all over the back of the vellum, and then apply the vellum to your cardstock. Now white cardstock works the best, when you've colored the vellum with Stampin' Blends or some other marker. And since you're sponging on a thin layer of glue, two things will happen. Number one, it's going to dry quicker. And number two, you will not see the glue through the vellum once it dries. Now, I came up with this idea completely by accident. I've always used this sponging technique to glue very small, detailed die cuts to my cards because it spreads the glue evenly and I avoid that oozing problem. So one day I decided to try it on the vellum. And what do you know? It worked like a charm. So how cool is that? So what do you think about the little tip for adhering the vellum? All right, now let's make some cards. So now that we have our vellum panels adhered to some white cardstock, let's get busy making the cards. The first panel is adhered in the center of my white card front. So prior to adhering the panel in the previous step, I started with a piece of white cardstock cut at 5.5 by 8.5 inches. I scored the 8.5 inch side at 4.25 inches to create the base of the card. Next, cut two pieces of polka dot pattern paper at 1.25 by 5 inches. Adhere one piece to each side of the vellum panel. For the finishing touch, simply embellish the card with a little greeting. Now the second card features the vellum panel adhered to a 1.25 by 5.25 inch piece of white cardstock. To create this card, start with a piece of mossy meadow cardstock cut at 5.5 by 8.5 inches. Score the 8.5 inch side at 4.25 inches to create the base of the card. Emboss the card front with the leaf embossing folder or any of your favorite embossing folders. Cut a 1.5 by 5.5 inch piece of pool party cardstock or some type of light blue cardstock. Adhere the vellum and the white panel to this piece and then adhere it to the center of your card front. For the finishing touch, embellish your card with a little greeting. Now you have two quick and simple card ideas as well as some tips for coloring and adhering the Graceful Glass Designer Vellum to your cardstock. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to download the printable tutorial. You can find the link below this video. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking it and sharing it with your friends. And leave a comment below to let me know what you enjoyed most about the video and the projects shared here today. Have fun getting creative, take care, and I'll see you soon.